So in this video, we're going to talk about self-tacking jibs. We're going to talk about some of the complications involved with different methodologies in accomplishing a self-tacking jib, because there are, like anything in a sailing boat, 10 ways to skin this cat. There are several systems that are well known and primarily used in making a self-tacking jib system. We're going to look at and highlight one on a nice big Gunboat 66. We're going to talk about it, the advantages that it has, and the limitations or compromises that have been made in that particular system compared to a full-blown performance-based self-tacking jib system. And we'll talk a little bit about self-tacking jib systems that I wouldn't recommend because there's too many compromises and basically too much friction in the system.
Let's go. Dad's getting impatient.
Take it off, Harry.
Clear on bike here. Bye bike here. Don't be bad while we're gone.
So literally just flick them up.
Bear off to port.
How much?
All the way.
90 degrees, basically.
Okay, buttons are through.
Okay, gunners on.
Alright, can I put the engines in neutral, Dad?
Yeah. Not going to take us long to get there.
Alright,
Okay, out yachting again on this slightly glamorous late autumn, early wintry day on the mighty ship. While we're out here, I thought let's talk about the front flappy thing. And this boat has a bit of an interesting setup. It's not too far off what we've done on some of the other gunboats, where we've got the jib, and then we have a staysail. The staysail's not on today because it's at the lighter end of the wind scale. I think we saw 15 knots max today, so a bit of a glamour day. So no staysail up. But you'll see the track and car arrangement. There's lots of cars on here, but also track not straight. So a couple of things to point out about track. The mast, the cars, the sheeting point, where the actual sheet goes on this one. Goes into the mast all the way up there, right to the top, but up there at the spreader. And talk about why that's the situation, the advantages of it, etc., etc. This one actually is a little bit unique in that it's got a central centering line, but in addition to that, the guys in New Zealand put these outboard lines on here as well. I'll talk about why the outboard lines are on here. So originally when this boat was set up, it was set up with these two cars, this bridge and the big block, and the centering line only. So this would control how far out the car would go. So your shooting angle, and you could adjust it by pulling the orange line, and that will pull the car closer to center, and the wind pressure would blow the car outboard for you. That's the theory. Okay, we're currently in a situation where I've had to use the outhaul. So there you go, you can see. So I pull the outhaul line on, and I'm pulling the car system out, but if I let it go, it's moving inboard against the wind. Now, you're wondering, why is that? How the heck does that happen? Well, there's a couple of reasons that happens. That's due to the curvature of the track, but more so, it's to do with this sheet here and where it goes up to the center there. I first came across this sort of problem with the 68s, where we would be reaching in particular, and be reaching in some heavier conditions, wanting to get the jib further outboard, which is cool. Sheeting on, trying to keep the leech down nice and tight, get so that our twist profile is correct, and then the breeze would lighten off a little bit, and then the jib would fly back inboard, and I was like, what the heck's going on here? Couldn't figure it out for a while. And then I was looking up, there's this great big rope that pulls this thing here inboard, because it's actually technically at the center line of the boat. So but it's at the center line of the boat aft of the jib, right? So this is a real important thing. So on our 18-foot skiffs, 14-foot skiffs, all our sailing, racing dinghies and things like that, and some other big boats, like the AC40s and 72s and 75s and all the rest of those, the jib doesn't go from here back up to the mast. It goes from here and it goes back down, and it goes towards the tack of the sail. And then like the AC40, it goes under the deck, and our 14-foot skiffs, 18-foot skiffs and all those, it does the same thing. It goes down in under the deck, and that then means that everything is sort of within the rotation point of the jib up forward. So the rotating point of the jib sheet, so if it's up here, if it came up to the longeron here, even if it didn't go right to the rotation point and was back here, the moment of the sail arm or the back of the sail is pushing the sail outboard. It's much stronger than the distance from here to here, so it moves outboard very easily. But when we have the situation where the sheeting point on center line is right down aft, or aft of the clew of the sail, it's got a lot of power to actually pull it back inboard. So while it keeps our rope systems and sheetings all really nice and clean and tidy, and keeps another rope off the trampoline area out of the way, which is really nice, it also has a downside in that it has situations where it wants to pull the car inboard, and you've got to technically have another line to have pull the car outboard. So these things. So actually, let this right off and then really highlight okay. I can't actually pull it all the way out. That's how much force is on there at the moment. This line pulling it back inboard. It's pretty substantial. It's not an insignificant amount. So quite a lot of load's got to go on here to pull this track out. There is a compromise with everything in sailing, right? We get another rope off the trampoline or off the deck area, and it goes up the mast, but we compromise a sailing system. So, you know, it's one of those things. which was more important. Then let's look at another little feature that I was talking about. If you were to take a line that follows the front of that mast down all the way to the deck, you'll see that that would actually be in front of the jib track. So what's done here is the mast step is quite far aft on these things, in particular on this tube. It's right on the very, very back edge. Depending on which boats they are, they move them around a bit, but generally now most modern multi-hulls, the mast base is quite far aft to keep control of a lot of things. I won't get too technical into that because that's a whole nother subject. But what it means is the tube comes out the front, controls out the front, blah, blah, blah. And it means that we can get the jib sheet, the jib car, technically, a little bit under the mast, which means that we can increase the J of the foot length of the jib a little bit, because we can technically sneak the track under the front of the mast tube. Right. Also, if you look here, is this the constant curve one? Yeah, I think this is a constant curve one. So there's a couple of theories here. The nicest one is to have a constant curve, which this one looks like it may be. With a few of the boats we've messed around with, the curvature is less in the middle and more at the ends. With the less curvature in the middle, what that does is pushes the car forward a little bit, which technically, depending on the sheeting system, if it's a forward sheeting thing, it eases the jib sheet off a little bit as the car comes through the tack. So we did this in the dinghies a fair bit, where the track is flattened out in the middle, which eases the sheet as the car passes through the center on its self-tacking journey. If you've got a straight track, okay, straight tracks, again, another convenience, that it's easy to install, easy to buy, a whole bunch of things. But the issue with that is that your jib sheeting angle gets all cocked up as you go outboard. So you can see here, all right, let's bring that. Oh, I've got it jammed off there. That's why you can't pull it, Shane. Bring the car inboard here. Not too hard to bring it inboard because the sheet helps me. Okay, so technically my car's inboard here, and let's say it's following that line in the deck grip there, yeah? Now if we have a look at the angle of my jib sheet here, okay, the angle of my jib sheet here, I've got several different hole positions here in the clue board, and what this is used for is actually controlling how much the jib sheet pulls the foot flat or fills it out, and controls the twist in the leech of the sail in regards to when I sheet on. Okay, so it's pretty critical which hole this is in. Now, so the angle that this sheet here runs through the sail, and technically it runs through the center of effort of the sail. Okay, if we were to follow a line from that block and follow it up, it would actually cut through the center of effort in the sail of the jib up there. Right. So now if I let this car outboard, what we want to do technically is keep this jib sheet angle the same, whether it's inboard or outboard. Okay, there's a small caveat. If anything, when it goes outboard further and you're reaching, you want the sail to be a little bit fuller, so technically you want this to go this way a little bit so that it's pulling down on the leech and making the bottom fuller as you go outboard. Now to do that, what I was just talking about in moving this line to go like this, you'd actually want the car to go forward more as you go outboard. So that requires more curvature in the track as you go further outboard to change the shape of the sail to be more beneficial for reaching and downwind sailing versus upwind sailing. Now, if we had a straight track, so if we followed that line there in the deck with the non-skid there, so you can see it. Now I'm going to let the car back out. Doesn't want to go back out. Try and push it out. Push it out. Go out there, you bugger. No. And I have to push it and pull a string. Hang on. Right. Now that I've got it out there, you can see that my car, if I had a straight track, would be here. And if my car goes from here to here, what happens? That changes the angle that my sheet now is working on my sail, because we couldn't change the position of the block on the clue board, right? Because all we did was just ease the sail down the track. And what did it do? Is that the car moved aft because we got a straight track now instead of the curved one, and our sheeting angle got flatter, so it's going to pull the bottom of the sail flatter and let the leech of the sail twist off a whole heap more, which is pretty much exactly what you don't want to do when you're changing from upwind to reaching and downwind. It's the exact opposite. So that's one of the reasons why we have a curved track versus a straight track, if we can do it. If you have to use a straight track, you're always going to end up with situations where you'll want to be clipping onto different points of the clue board with barber haulers and tweakers and things like that. So hope that sort of helps explain why we have curved tracks, particularly for headsails. And it's actually the same for a mainsail in a roundabout sort of way, but we got a boom helping control things. It's more about changing of loads, but you can get away with a straight track on a mainsail more than you can on a headsail. Super important for headsails to have curved tracks if you can get it. Right. So why have we got so many cars on this thing? And why have I got another 2 on the port side, another 2 on the starboard side here? Well, this arrangement is to accommodate for the staysail. When we got the staysail up, particularly offshore, you'll generally have the J1, which is this sail here, will be on 2 sheets that run through here and here, port and starboard sheet, and the staysail will be on the self-tacker. And what that allows is for us to, particularly offshore, because you'll be on a tack for half a day, maybe a whole day, or you could be on one jibe for a week. It means that we could have the 2 sails up and change between staysail and J1 without having to change the whole sheeting arrangement. We can have this furled away and the J1 sheeted on through here and back to sheeted on here and back to the primary winch. You can have the sheet like that, and that's what this outhauler helps to address too, because it wants to pull the cars inboard. Or we can furl the J1 and then deploy the staysail, or we could actually have them both deployed at the same time, so we can make a sail change that's not bareheaded by having this arrangement here. And we did a very similar thing with the Gunboat 68s as well, but the difference was, instead of having a double car and a loop arrangement, I ended up custom designing a stopper car with an eyelet in it, so that you would actually have a pin stop, it would drop down, and it had basically a friction ring incorporated into it, so your J1 could sheet through the stopper It wasn't quite as adjustable as this, but it did give more scope on the track because it was only a single pin stopper instead of a double car with ring arrangement. So again, compromises on designs, and more than anything, understanding the use case of when are you going to use it. Do you need it to be able to be trimmed inboard and outboard from the cockpit, or can you just move the pin to change the arrangement? You know, does it have to be adjusted on the fly or not, etc, etc. So it's very much a horses for courses. Each system has its advantages and disadvantages and compromises. Yeah, but there's a heap that goes into something as simple as a self-tacking jib. It's not just whack it on there and off you go. So I hope that was a little lesson for today that helps clear some things up for people, or may confuse a whole heap of things more for people. Anyway, I'm gonna keep plodding along out here on this absolutely terrible day.
She grew up with love everyone would expect. Had an army behind her, got it from the opposite sex. Friends told her she was beautiful, so she gathered up her confidence, decided to go out on her own. She met you at the peak of her confidence, but all you cared about was would she submit, drop everything and give her all to you. Well, what about what the girls want? What about self-destiny? Shouldn't even be an argument. Consider what's best for me. What about what the girls want? What about self-destiny? Shouldn't even be an argument. Consider what's best for me. What's best for me? Consider what's best for me.
Okay, so we were looking at the curvature of the track and the jib, and when it was out sailing, and we were looking at the sail was wanting to come back towards the center. Now I want to sort of look at it in a little bit more detail, why that was happening. Because we've got a curved track, we should naturally think that it should all move naturally with the sail rotating around the forestay and going out. But what's is an issue here is our curved track has only addressed one problem. It's addressed the problem of the sheeting angle not changing too much, which is a good big plus. Okay, but what it's not addressing is the issue where the jib is rotating around the forestay. The clew actually gets higher off the deck as well. Also, with the jib sheeting system on this particular boat, where the jib comes out of the mast, it exaggerates a problem with the length of the jib sheets and the rotation point on the mast. And I'll demonstrate that in a second, what the issue is. Okay, so I'll highlight it with the sheet and the exit point on the mast first, because it's really easy to demonstrate and highlights the issue. Okay, so here's the jib sheet, right? It's nice and loose. If I put the jib sheet down here at the track, right? That's the length from the out of the mast to the center of the track. Now, if I move this over, oh, look what we've got going on here. It's a case of the jib sheet is now not long enough to reach down to the track. Okay, so that's the same as pulling on the sheet or the sheet being too short. Basically, what it wants to do is pull the sail back in because it can't actually go out here because the sheet is too short. Okay, so we actually need this track to lift up off the deck that far if we wanted our sheeting tension to stay the same from the center to out here. But you say, Shane, oh, we actually never actually want the jib car to be in the center because it's always 4 to 8 degrees off center line depending on the boat and how fast we go. So let's look at that as well. So when we was this particular boat here, the jib sheeting angle is not far off where it is now. So put it down here. Let's put it on the back corner of the track here. Okay, that's where I'm sheeted going upwind. Now I want to start reaching. So I bear away. So I ease the cars out. And this jib sheet, you can see, is actually now too short. Oh, let's do it again. The jib sheet is too short once I start moving outboard. You can see that the jib sheet is moving away from the track section. So we actually have to ease the jib sheet to also allow for the car to move outboard. Okay. Now this is not too difficult because it's easy to ease the jib sheet to allow for the car to move outboard. But it does mean there is a sailor input that is required, that you've got to ease the sheet to allow the car to move outboard. This is why also you'll see on our really high performance boats like the America's Cup boats, the 14-foot skiffs, the 18-foot skiffs, the F-18s, all of the performance dinghies and race boats, the track is curved not only in this direction, but it's curved upwards on the outboard side as well, so that the car stays relatively the same throughout the whole motion of the car moving on the jib track. That way, it is technically a full self-tacking sail. Here, I guess you could say it's not 100% full self-tacking because you need a human input to allow the car to move inboard and outboard if you want to change the track or the jib sheeting position. So there's a lot of things that go into this, the simple self-tacking headsail. Now, so you can see the small issue with the jib sheet coming out of the front of the mast and how it was pulling the sail on, and you can see why, and that is because the jib sheet, you could see, had to be lengthened for it to move outboard. Now this is actually also the same case with the jib itself. When the jib is out and you have it here, as you move it outboard, the jib clew also moves away from the deck. So it's exaggerated 2 times, where you've got the jib coming away from the track and you've got the sheet coming away from the track. So this is why we were seeing on this particular boat and other boats that have this jib sheet, self-tacking jib sheet that comes out of the front of the mast, why the jib, when you sheet, why the jib car moves inboard when you pull the jib sheet on, particularly if there is not enough wind to hold the jib outboard of where it needs to be. This is very difficult to explain, but very easy to see. So if we're reaching and we need the jib sheeting way out here, and we're relying solely on the wind pressure to hold the jib out here, if you have this arrangement where the jib sheet comes out the front of the mast and you pull the jib sheet on and it's not very windy, it will always pull your jib car inboard on you. Just one of the quirks of this sheeting system. If we had the jib sheet go to the front of the longeron, like what we do with other high performance boats, this effect is reduced in that it's only the jib sheet, the jib clew height changing, and there's enough stretch in the materials to allow this to sort of happen. But we actually end up into other issues. You can see here, we've got hatches and things, so having that arrangement of sheeting becomes difficult or limiting with deck hardware gear in this triangle of sweeping sheets. So there are trade-offs. But if we wanted this purely performance-based, we would have the jib sheet arrangement where the jib sheet would come from the longeron up there, not the mast up there. We would have the track not only curved fore and aft, but we'd have it curved up and down. That would be from a pure performance perspective. If we start adding the compromises, the compromise chain goes that you get rid of the up and down curvature, but you maintain the fore and aft curvature like this, because you can easily ease the jib sheet to allow for the up and down component problem, but it's very difficult to accommodate for the jib sheeting angle problem. You can't basically go up and reclip the jib sheet into this different position on the sail. So if you're going to compromise, you can compromise on keeping your track flat, but you cannot compromise on the curvature on the deck, because that will always give you the wrong jib sheeting angle. Yeah. I hope that tries to explain a fairly complicated issue for you guys. Some will be asking, what about the sheeting system where it's like a main sheet, where we have the jib sheet here, it goes through a block here, then up to the sail, then back down to there and through, right? That sheeting system I don't recommend for anyone unless there is absolutely no other option. We've run that sheeting system on many boats, and I wouldn't say it's a complete disaster. It's got a lot of compromises in that you have two sets of friction to overcome to allow the sail to self-tack properly. One, you've got the friction of the ball bearings in the cars, and you've got the friction of the pulley blocks to overcome. So there's two sets of system frictions you have to overcome. Whereas in a system like this, the only friction you have to overcome is the friction in the cars, because technically the sheeting, the sheet doesn't move, it's sort of at its hinge points, so the sheet doesn't have to run through blocks and change its position. So you've only got the cars moving. It's actually a pretty complicated subject, isn't it? trying to explain something that should be fairly simple. So we've covered some of the compromises that are involved in a self-tacking jib system. And you can see there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of potential complications. And now you can understand why some self-tacking jib systems work much better than other self-tacking jib systems. The number one enemy in a self-tacking jib system is friction. And that's friction from the cars. And if you've gone the fully compromised system, also friction from the blocks. So I hope this helps people understand their systems, if they've got them, or if they're intending on putting a system on a new boat or an existing boat, things that they can consider. Anyway, I hope you like the video, and we'll get you in the next one.